How do I grow spiritually? How do I really make things better? Earth is like a school, and we're here to learn our spiritual lessons. All the experiences of our life are part of those lessons. But when you've had the spiritual awakening, it means it's time to take that accelerated journey upward, because now you can do it in a more conscious way, which means you can travel the path faster because now you're doing it with more intention. Metaphysics is like studying music or studying a language. You don't get good at this overnight. It really is the most exciting adventure there is, because it's the adventure of your own soul, and it's the adventure of the soul in the universe. Each incarnation is an opportunity to build the soul power, and you can learn to transcend the persona identity, where you only see yourself as this personality that you are right now, and come into the experience of the immortal self, the real you. This was the thing that awakened me in my thing, the sense that there was a greater presence here than just what we commonly are connected with.
What is your hope for humanity?
I have a lot of hope for humanity. And it's the fact of how we hold on to that better that things are going to happen. When we are pessimistic, we don't want to do things. What's the point? It paralyzes us to action. And again, all you have to do is look at history and see any of its true progress. It was through inspiration. It was through divine guidance. There were things that were going on that were helped to make this happen. But I firmly believe the world is getting better, not worse.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Karma is the belief that your actions and decisions can influence both your current life and the next one. In simpler terms, what you choose to do can result in positive or negative outcomes. But karma is more complex than it seems. Various elements, including our past lives, play a role in determining our outcomes. To help us understand this intriguing concept better, I invited Dimitri Moraitis to explain the mystery of this cosmic force. Dimitri Moraitis has been helping souls grow at Spiritual Arts Institute, the school he co-founded with the Mozart of metaphysics, Barbara Martin. His nonprofit is known as the premier metaphysical school by thousands of students around the world. He has authored several books, including international bestsellers and lectures across the US, and has spoken on various spiritual topics. During our conversation, Dimitri will share insights on the various forms of karma, explaining their effects on us. He will also provide practical tips and tools to navigate karmic challenges and prevent the creation of negative karma, which are essential for our spiritual growth. Hello, Dimitri. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for making time to be here. I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect. I took some time to explore your content, and it's clear that you're very prolific. You have a vast amount of knowledge in various areas of spirituality, not just limited to karma and past lives, which we're going to be focusing on today. So I just want to start by acknowledging that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a 40-year journey. And, I had my awakening like everybody did when I was in my 20s. And I knew I had now really found my real kind of path in life. And I was also very fortunate to find a spiritual teacher early on who was just beyond incredibly knowledgeable. And the talents she possessed were absolutely extraordinary. So I tell people I could have read every metaphysical book in the Library of Congress and not got what I got from her. And what I didn't realize early on was that she was training me to also be a teacher. She was a generation ahead of me to kind of carry on the work, because a lot of this is passing it on from teacher to student and teacher to student. So that's kind of the lineage that we practice. Yeah.
Are you talking about Barbara Y. Martin?
Martin.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. She's affectionately known as a Mozart of metaphysics. I love that.
Right, right. Because of her just, Mozart had these, it seemed like drops from heaven, right? He had these just, at 4 years old, he was already a composer, and Barbara was seeing auras at age
Yeah,
three,
prodigy, right?
the prodigy, right. But she was also a great teacher, and part of our work was teaching internally, but also getting it out to people, because as we're all seeing now, I mean, even have a conversation like this, not that long ago would have been absolutely unheard of, right? But the interest has just literally exploded. And this is part of a kind of a global spiritual renaissance that we're going through. And she called it, she said it 40 years ago that was already on the way. And here it is now.
It pretty much started in the 70s, right? Because that's when all the hippie movement came about and you had all those gurus and cults. Would you say that the seeds of it started back then?
Well, actually, of course, the seeds of it are ancient, right? The modern
Of
seeds,
course,
actually,
yes.
you could trace
But in
back to
modern
theosophy.
history.
Right. In modern history, actually, theosophy in the 1900s. And then the early gurus, the really strong ones like Yogananda and Paramananda and Rudolf Steiner and Alice Bailey, those people really kind of, and as a matter of fact, Alice Bailey kind of, this is the 1930s, she used the expression New Age, that there was a New Age coming. And then, yes, with the 60s and the 70s, kind of that got fashionable, the New Age stuff. But really what happened in the 90s is, publishing, and it got a little commercialized because they realized, oh, there's money here. Before it was really not. When Barbara first started lecturing, she dropped the phone when someone wanted her to talk on the aura, because it was like an unheard of topic,
Yeah.
in those days. And then it just, meditation, yoga, those are extremely fringy things. And now there's meditation apps, yoga is completely common. And so it's what's so nice is it's the natural momentum. And what's really exciting, so our first book we did together, Change Your Aura, Change Your Life, in 2003, when it came out, everybody was still kind of in, you could call it that hippie mode a little bit. They wanted sort of the phenomenal part of it. And then I actually did an interview with the same person we did in 2003 about just a year ago, and they were saying the same thing. The mood has changed completely. Now a lot more people are asking the serious questions. How do I grow spiritually? How do I really make things better? It's I don't know if it's a generational change or just everything has just gotten a little more, we're now in it a while longer. But it's really exciting to see that, because that's really what this is about. Our nonprofit, the motto is helping souls grow. So the whole idea, Earth is like a school, and we're here to learn our spiritual lessons. All the experiences of our life are part of those lessons. But when you've had the spiritual awakening, it means it's time to take that accelerated journey upward, because now you can do it in a more conscious way, which means you can travel the path faster, because now you're doing it with more intention. And that's a wonderful thing to do.
Thanks for explaining that. I'd love to know more about your spiritual awakening, Dimitri, because I mean, you've been on this path for a while, as you just
Right,
mentioned, and you co-founded the Spiritual Arts Institute with Barbara. So tell
right.
us how you got to that point. Like, what was it that
Yeah, yeah.
helped you to actually get into this? And yeah, just tell us about your evolution.
Well, I had a kind of a good normal upbringing, Greek parents, and my father was a doctor, and my mom was very artistic, and I was leaning, I played classical piano, and also I fell in love with movies, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be a movie maker, and I went to school for it and all of that. And then, if you're going to make movies, you basically have to go to Los Angeles. So I went to Los Angeles to pursue that. And I didn't even know what metaphysics was at that time, but I just called them my inspiration moments, where I was kind of like in a different state of consciousness. And it was a very elated one. And it just, all these kind of inspirations came in, and I had no control over it. It kind of came and left like the wind. And eventually it got so strong it just fundamentally just changed my perspective. And it was, I call it my Saul on the road to Damascus moment. And even at that moment, I didn't quite have a name for it. Some people thought, oh, you've had a religious experience. So it doesn't feel quite like that. And then when someone said metaphysics, bingo, then I knew I had found it. And I was, fortunately, LA had, there's places where you can go to look, and I was studying as much as I could. And then by accident, I was invited to go to a dinner party, and Barbara was there. And it was the first time I meditated, and it was like this ancient door opening up. And then afterwards, yes, I started to kind of pour my heart out a little bit because I had so much on my mind. I thought it was a great conversation. She joked later, "Oh, you interrogated me that first night," But, she started to give language to all these things I was experiencing. And then realizing she's talking from her own experiences. By the end of the night, I said, okay, I found my teacher. I knew that was the one I had to study. And then we jumped in the deep end of the pool. Unfortunately, the movie business at the time was not very open to metaphysical ideas.
Was this which decade was this?
Oh, gosh. Well, it was the 1980s. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
It was, yeah, I mean, I was actually on a very nice trajectory, and I think my friends thought I lost my mind. But it wasn't really a choice, really. I just, when you find the right thing, you just find it, right? And you have to pursue it. And I also realized it wasn't just a personal thing, that I think I'm supposed to get involved with this more than that. And eventually it did become a career. But at that time, Barbara only had she was teaching from inspiration. There were no books, there were no real notes or anything like that. And after a while, I said, look, we got to organize all this. It was like, encyclopedia of notes, right? And then we started first we had a precursor to the nonprofit. And again, in her understated way, I didn't realize she was also now grooming me to teach, and I found, wow, natural to do it. And then we started the nonprofit, and then the mandate was to get all these books out. We're still working on two more. Unfortunately, Barbara passed on this year. But I'm finishing two more books, and then we're getting these team of dedicated long-term light workers. As you know, metaphysics is like studying music or studying a language. You don't get good at this overnight. You have to make it kind of a lifestyle. So we have these training classes for every kind of level. And because of the wealth of knowledge, you can go for the day, or you can make this, a lifestyle choice. And there's just so much to learn. And it really is the most exciting adventure there is, because it's the adventure of your own soul, and it's the adventure of the soul in the universe. People say, is the universe alive? I mean, is there life in the universe? Well, the universe is alive. So of course there is life in the universe, and you're trying to connect with that on a deeper level. Yeah.
Were you able to find community during that time when your friends thought you were crazy? Because I know that is really critical. Because
Yeah,
when you're younger, we wanna belong. We want to feel like we're
right.
accepted, and it takes
Yeah,
courage to move away from what is socially accepted at that time. So,
exactly.
were you able to
Exactly.
do that?
Well, the one thing I guess I did have on my side is I was pretty determined. I was not, I had I love my family deeply. I had great friends. It was not like I was in a crisis mode in my life. So it was hard because, well, Barbara said, it's easy with you. I don't have to unteach you things, because I didn't have a lot of knowledge about metaphysics. So I was kind of an open book. But at the same time, my life wasn't organized around metaphysics. So that was an adjustment, absolutely. But I learned pretty quick, and when some close weren't getting this, and Barbara again gave the best advice, she said, just love them anyway. So in other words, don't try to, in the beginning, I was kind of trying to change my friends and my family, so like trying to push it on them. And
I mean,
I realized,
it's part of the when you're getting into metaphysics and spirituality, you definitely need to shed a few layers, and you have to
yeah,
find
yeah,
a new group of friends.
exactly. So new friends emerge, and the
Yeah.
fair weather friends definitely do dissipate. And the ones that are genuine, you find a common bond, even if it isn't always metaphysical. If you really like somebody, just like them. So I found that I just still showed the love and care for the people that were important to me. But like Shakespeare said, be true to your own self, and you can't be false to anyone. And yes, as you said, then through the working with Barbara and the classes there, I started to meet a new group of friends, and it was all around metaphysics and how we could share things. And that even now, we came down to Encinitas here in San Diego to open a physical center, right? And that was the idea, partly like you're saying, to build community. We've been doing online classes since 2006, long before the Zoom era. And again, now there's a little bit of a challenge there. Let's say you're in Dubai right now, I'm in the United States. Well, how do we build community on two different continents? It's a little extra effort to do that. We just finished an annual retreat where literally everybody did fly in from all over the world to physically come together. And that is magic. Let's face it, Zoom is amazing, but there's nothing like being together.
Oh, definitely.
In person.
Yeah.
That is the magic.
It's a completely different experience. You're just completely immersed in that energy and
Right. And you do have to, but you're right, it does take courage to do, because
it does.
if your friends around you are like, come on, let's do this, you have to have a little guts to say, I got to do what's right for me.
Absolutely. So, Dimitri, I want to jump into karma.
Okay, well, that's simple subject.
I mean,
That's
I looked at
easy
all
thing.
your books and all the wonderful information that you have provided on your website. And the one that really I am most intrigued with is karma, because it's such a fascinating topic on so many levels.
Oh
And it's a
gosh,
term
yeah.
that a lot of people are familiar with, but don't really understand it at its core. So, explain to us what exactly karma
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, you've said that, such a sacred topic, and now you have things like Karma Cafe, Karma T-shirt. We've kind of trivialized something that's a very sacred,
Yeah.
teaching. Now, karma is actually, of course, a Sanskrit word, right? And it comes from the word ka, which means action. So in the essence, karma is action. And actually the Hindu philosophy, one of the great mystical teachings is the karma yoga, the law of right action, which basically teaches that our actions have consequences. The things we do really do matter. Sometimes you think, hey, I stole that money. I got away with it. I'm so darn clever. Well, you might have gotten away with it, but you didn't really get away with it, right? Because you created an action that created a disturbance in the natural flow of life, even if you, quote unquote, got away with it. So what we term here in the West, when we use the term karma, we term it as action and its inevitable consequences, the law of cause and effect. So what we must realize is for everything we do, we're putting an energy out into the universe, and it's going to come back to us in the way we put it out. It's not really punishment or reward. It's just a natural law. So if I'm doing constructive things that are building up, that energy is going to come back to me. If I am doing things that are hurting people and just about me, myself, and I, there's a period of time where I'm sort of, quote unquote, getting away with it. But in the end, it's going to swing back. You have to think of it like a boomerang. You throw the boomerang out, it doesn't come back to you right away. It goes out, it hits a certain distant point, and then it swings back. And that's the way karma works. It comes back, so we're feeling the consequences of our action. Now, where it gets dramatic, because it's hard to talk about karma without talking about reincarnation, because the two are inexorably linked. Because sometimes our actions don't come back to us in the same lifetime. So the person you are today, right now, is of course the actions you were from the time of your birth, but also from your experiences of your past lives, I should say. Did you have opportunity in this life? Was there struggle? What are your physical attributes? What is your health like? What are your talents like? Talent is not an accident. If you're born with a talent, you earn that talent in a past life. Okay, we talked about Mozart. How does Mozart have all this musical talent at age 4? It's because he brought it in from other lifetimes when he was a musician. And he's picking up the pieces to build on it right now. So the key is we all come to this earth with unfinished business. We come to this earth with some good karmas and not so good karmas. And the key is to, as the song goes, eliminate the negative, accentuate the positive. But the problem is when we're faced, let's say, with a difficult karma, we see ourselves as a victim. We see the other, if it's with a person, we see them as the problem. We don't realize we may be the actual source of that problem. Why are they treating us in this antagonistic way? Well, if I treated them antagonistically in a past life, it's going to come back again. So with karma, the big key is to take the bigger picture, because karmic situations are not punishment or reward, they're lessons. If I spilled the milk, I got to clean it up. And the whole process of going through that cleanup is teaching the soul, okay, it wasn't really a good idea to abuse that person, even if it was 3 centuries ago. And this is the time where we come back to do it. The other thing with reincarnation is, and this is connected to karma too, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how saintly you are, you can't learn it all in a single lifetime. It's just absolutely impossible. It's like saying, I'm the best kindergartner there's ever been. It means, okay, the next level you're going to do great. But the Bible says there's a time for everything. For example, experience both sexes. How can you do that in a single lifetime? So we're meant to experience all the races of the earth. We're meant to experience all the cultures of the earth. We're meant to experience different conditions of being wealthy or poor, or all these things are teachers that bring maturity to the soul, and they can't be accomplished in a single lifetime. It's going to take multiple lifetimes to do that. So if we look at our rich soul history that has brought us today, we would say, oh my God, I've come through so much to get to where I am this day. And it still comes down, though, to choice. We like to say the choices we made yesterday have brought us to where we are today, and the choices we're making today are setting up our tomorrows.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. What about someone who feels like they've been dealt a bad hand in life, and that could be because they were a murderer in their past life, or they cheated somebody?
Yes.
How can they wrap their heads around that? Because they can't be held accountable for something that a past version of them did. And now they're like, okay, so we're stuck with all this bad karma now. That's unfair.
It's not a version of them.
What would you say to someone like that?
Right, but it's not a past version of them. It's them. It's the same soul in every incarnation. It's the soul evolution. Now, we have what's called a personality, ego. Persona comes from the Greek meaning to mask. So, okay, my name's Dimitri Moraitis. I was born in Denver, Colorado, of Greek parents. That's my part of my persona of this incarnation, but it's not my soul. In my previous incarnation, I was not Dimitri. I was not born in Denver, Colorado. I was not born of Greek parents. So if you were to go into a room and see all your past lives and like people in a room, oh my God, I've lived all these lives here, you would say, which one is me? And in a sense, none of them are you. They're like parts you played in a play. Each incarnation is an opportunity to build the soul power, and you can, and Yogananda talked about this, you can learn to transcend the persona identity, where you only see yourself as this personality that you are right now, and come into the experience of the immortal self, the real you. This was the thing that awakened me in my thing, the sense that there was a greater presence here than just what we commonly are connected with. And we're meant to go into those inner states to understand I'm far more than who we think we are. Again, the Hindu philosophy teaches us. We live in a world of Maya. We live in a world of self-created illusion. Not that the world is illusory, but where we see it through the five physical senses and we say this is all there is, that's an illusion. That's like saying the visible light spectrum is all there is to the electromagnetic spectrum. It's one little piece of a much, much, much bigger spectrum. And the Hindus would say you've got to learn to drop the Mayic veil, the veil of illusion, reach the Atman state where the soul realizes who and what it truly is, and then join with Brahman, the ultimate reality, like a drop returning back into the ocean. That's the journey we are on. So when we come in, when our soul comes in, let me put a kind of in a silly comparison for a moment. Let's say your best friend is in a room, okay? And you walk into that room, for some reason, you slug your best friend right in the jaw, practically breaking their jaw. Okay? Then you walk out of the room, and for some reason, you forget that you did this. And you come in happy to see your friend, and you walk into the room, and there's your friend. Now, how do you think your friend is going to respond to you?
They're going to be mad.
They're going to be pretty mad. And you're going to be, why are you mad at me? I didn't do anything. But you did. You are still responsible for your soul actions. That's the big key. In our work, in metaphysical work, we have to take responsibility for our soul's growth. That's the big key. You can't pass the buck and say it's someone else's problem, or it didn't involve me. If you spilled that milk, even if it was 10 centuries ago, you've got to clean it up. And in that cleaning up process, the soul is growing. So going back to your question, if someone comes in, now look, there are dynamics in the world that can happen right now. So let's put that aside, okay? But let's say you're scenario. We like to say karmic conditions are not the road, it's the end result, it's the conditions on the road. So let's say I had a great opportunity in a past life to be a doctor, or to have some, a really nice job. And I blew it. It was wine, women, song, or it was just I got lazy and I just went in all these other directions and I never did it. I lost, and I had all the privilege, I had all the opportunity, I had everything it would take to make it happen, and I squandered it all. Going, I see life sucks, and I get maybe a little bit bitter, and I end my life on that way. No, I didn't accomplish what I was meant to do, become a doctor. That was part of my life purpose. So you'll come back again to pursue doctor, but because you forfeited that right of privilege, you'll come in with not that privilege, but the desire to still be a doctor. But the road will be much more difficult. You don't have all the support systems. You don't have the financial support you had before. So you're going to have to work, 10 times harder to reach that same place. You'll still reach it. You'll still get there, but it'll be harder. And then the question is, what's the lesson? The lesson is, don't take those things for granted. And once the soul learns that, it won't make that mistake again.
Are all situations karmic, or are they?
No.
So how do we identify when we're in the throes of a karmic situation? Are there certain signs?
That's a tricky thing. In the karma book you mentioned, we list some possible. These are not cookie cutter scenarios. But what Barbara used to say is, if you're not sure it's karmic, treat it as if it were. Then you're playing it safe. Because you're still going to employ most of the same principles. But for example, let's say you find yourself, what we say, checkmated into a situation. Whatever you try to do, you find yourself in the same thing. There was a lady in one of our classes.
It's repeating.
It repeats,
it's hard to learn, perhaps. It's hard for you to learn.
Right. Well, let's say a soured relationship. Okay. And then, I'm getting out of this relationship. You go to another one. It's the same thing again, a different person. I get out of that one. I'll find another one. Right.
Yeah.
After all, you say, it's not the person, it's you. What are you not learning in this situation? So when you find yourself checkmated, yes. And look, I'll just say this outright. Be extra careful with your family because you have known your family members before. Now, if you're fortunate and have what we call good family karma and you've got good relationship with your family, great. If not, let's say there's somebody, whether it's a parent or a sibling, and there's rivalry or difficulty, take extra care to take that high road because there could very likely be a karmic
Really?
scenario in that situation. Absolutely,
Even
absolutely.
relatives?
Mostly relatives, because you can't just walk away from your mother or father. You could walk away from a friend, but you're not going to just walk away from your mother or father. So the fact that you come close like this is that time to really forge that through. In some of the classes, it's amazing. I'm thinking of one woman right now where she thought, I think it was her brother, just thought he was just the problem and all, she kept pointing the finger at him, right? And after going through this process of kind of reconfiguring things and realizing, oh my God, this is me. I did something to him. The reason he's feeling this way is because of me. Her attitude to him changed completely. And interestingly enough, his attitude to her changed. The relationship took 180 degrees for the positive because now that friction started to be seen in its more, shall we say, proper light because she initiated the action that was needed to do that.
What if they're a raging narcissist and they're just messing up your life? I mean,
Well,
I
look,
can
we're
really
not.
hear the collective say that, like they might have a family member who's just impossible to deal with and they're just trouble.
First of all, you want to remember, why are you here on this earth? Okay? You're here to learn and grow. You are going to learn some of your most important lessons from your closest relationships. So when we have somebody, it's not about changing them. Okay, you're only responsible for your own soul's growth, not another person's soul's growth. And you want to look at your imperfections. Where do I need to be more tolerant? If you don't have compassion for another person, because that person you just said was a narcissist still has an eternal spark of life within them, that's the part you're trying to connect with, not whatever the facade is doing, because the facade is where those eternal feuds come into play. There will be, you're trying to get beyond that. You're trying to pierce like I said, you're trying to pierce that veil of matter and see the life within, the good. So hold them in a high ideal image. Your question should be, how should I best handle this situation? So you're trying to take the high road. Now, it doesn't mean take abuse or anything like that. I'm not saying those things. But at the same time, the more you see them in the light of the divine, the more you'll be in charge. And okay, that's just the way they are, but you're not going to be directly affected by it. Because what happens is we get entrenched emotionally with our family members, and it isn't so objective. So we're seeing the mistake in them, but we're not looking at what's going on with us.
How do we get to that place of consciousness? Because it's not easy, Dimitri. It's not.
No, it's not.
Not
Well,
easy to take the hard
Earth is not the easy. I didn't say it was the easiest schoolhouse on Earth.
So what do you advise your students? What do you tell them if they have a situation like this?
One of the things we do, one of the foundational things is, of course, our meditation. So we work a lot with the auric field because everything you're mentioning, we're talking about, is in the aura. Everything is in all that energy is in the auric field. So if I'm having a healthy relationship with somebody, that energy exchange is seen in the aura. If it's an unhealthy exchange, that's seen in the auric field. So one of the first things we encourage is meditating with divine light, because the more spiritual power you have in your auric field, the stronger you are to be able to just handle these things. Because it takes energy to do everything we've been talking about. And if the energy isn't there, how are you going to make it happen? You've got to build more energy in you, and that does take a little time. I'll give you a very quick example. There was a lady in one of our classes, and she had a fear of crossing physical bridges. I mean, it was a palpable, I don't know what they call that fear, but she got nervous every time she had to cross a physical bridge, and to get to work, she had to cross 3 bridges. Right? So this was a serious problem for her. She went to counseling for a while. It didn't quite fix it. And after about 3 months, again, this didn't happen overnight, but about 3, 4 months of working with the light, she said, one day I went to work and I didn't even remember I'd crossed the 3 bridges. It was just
What did
a
she do?
non-issue. Well, she went through the whole process of working with the light to release these things. See, we have in our auric field, we have energies that are of a more kind of enlightened, beautiful, bright colors. Like you got that beautiful purple in your office right now, and you said, okay, that's a peaceful energy in the auric field right now. And we have the not so nice colors. Jealousy, anger, fear, resentment, worry, hostility, all those show up as these kind of jagged, unhealthy energies. Well, we got to get rid of those things. We got to release those things, and then we got to bring in the light, and then we've got to live the light. A real quick example of this. Let's say you have to ask for a raise at your job. You know, you deserve it. It's long overdue, but you literally chicken out every time it comes in and go into the boss's office. You just don't do it. So in the aura, that person might be lacking in the dynamic energy of gold, the energy of confidence, self-assurance. They may have even a little bit of the fear energy, the gray, the debilitating color. Now, sure, if I just keep pushing myself, I could make it happen. I go in there and I ask for that raise. But you could bring in the gold light, which brings in the confidence, get that energy moving in your aura. You're still going to have to go into the boss's office and ask for the raise, but you got to notice it's a little bit easier because the power of that confidence is already in your auric field. And then when you actually go out and do it, it starts integrating. And regardless or not if you get that raise, you now have the courage to go out and, shall we say, claim what is rightfully yours. And that will help you in other facets of life. We had a doctor in one of our classes, and he was honest. He said, you know what? I don't show enough compassion for my patients. I see so many every day. It's in and out, in and out, in and out. Just, you know, like, and I used to joke, you know, too many times doctors see patients like petri dishes rather than people, right? Little science experiments to figure out what's going on. But he knew that was not working. So he brought in the deep rose pink energy, the loving rays. He took time with his patients, and he said, oh my God. Again, this happened over weeks, not over a moment. Said, not only are my patients loving it, my practice is busier than ever because now the word got out, he's got good bedside manners. So that you employ the energies, and that's how you make changes in your life. In school, you're so here, through our actions, we're meant to take the conditions of wherever we're in and improve them, improve our life. And improve and raise our consciousness. We also like to say, not only do you want to leave this world better than the way you found it, you want to leave this world at a higher level of consciousness than when you started. And this is a great time. The fact why the higher says this is one of the best places to grow spiritually is because of the difficulties, because there's more resistance, because it is harder. The more harder you have to push, the more you grow. What do when you go to the gym? You work out with weights, right? It's resistance. The more weight, the more resistance, the stronger you become. So again, look at your challenges in your life as opportunities, and you'll have a whole different perspective on life.
That makes sense, Dimitri. And in your book, you talk about the different types of karma. And you say that it can impact different areas of our life, such as finances, relationships, careers, family dynamics, as you just talked about, and health. Could you please elaborate on these different types of karma and how can we identify whether or not we are facing karma in a certain area of our life?
Right. So, yeah. So karma is what we're trying to say. Karma is specific. So, in other words, if I break my leg, I'm not trying to fix my arm, I'm trying to fix my leg. So sometimes I've heard people say things like, I'm such a nice person. Why am I going through all these financial troubles? Well, what does being a nice person have to do with knowing how to manage money? They're not the same thing, right? So in other words, let's take money karma. That's one of the karmas, right? If I mismanage money, I'm creating money karma. So I may come back in another incarnation and face financial difficulties. Opposite, if I really handle money well, I may come into life and suddenly, boom, I know how to use money. It's a talent just like anything else. So if I notice that, say, I am a nice person, but I'm chronically dealing with financial issues. Now, look, every one of us have a bump on the road. I'm not talking about that. But if it's like a chronic financial issue,
recurring
yeah,
challenge.
or it's always there. I have some people I know, they're always dealing with money issues and then you dig a little deeper, they just don't know how to handle money. And their attitude is like, I don't have enough. I'm broke. It's what we call the lack and limitation. I mean, you live in a town right now that's a lot about wealth.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
A lot of people
Right, but they do have that consciousness. Now, it doesn't always mean they're nice people. You can have the talent of wealth, but not be a kind person. And that creates karma related potentially to relationships. So that's what I mean. We mean is the karma will happen. So they're interconnected, but they're in their own lanes. So if it's a relationship karma, you got to deal with it with a relationship. If it's financial karma, you got to deal with it financial. If it is physical karma, I forget the author that said our bodies are apt to be our autobiography. Why do some people come in with a strong, healthy, pleasing body? Another one, a very weak, almost sickly body at birth. Now, again, put aside things that can happen in the womb and things like that, but that can be physical karma. The biblical quote, an eye for an eye, did not actually mean if you poke my eye out, I'm going to poke your eye out right back. What it meant is if you poke someone's eye out, somewhere down the line, you're going to experience blindness to understand what you did. And then the soul, once it goes through that experience, will say, I will never do that again.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about relationship karma? Because I know there are a lot of singles these days struggling to find Mr. or Miss Right. And it's
Mr. and Miss Right, yeah.
It's something that's very prevalent in the younger generations, Gen Z and millennials.
Right,
so what are your thoughts on that? Like, why is that happening? Is that like a karmic thing, younger generation?
Well, I think, part of it is I think some of the social expectations and norms are changing right now, let's say compared to my generation where there was a little more, I don't know if the roles were clear.
A lot more stable, and you stay with your spouses a lot longer.
Right. So the point is, now you can look at this a couple different ways. Again, it's sort of, what are your goals? Do you want to have a family? All right. What is it you want to create in your life? Now, one of the things we teach, and this is connected, you probably read this in the book, is there is a tapestry of life for every single one of us. This is a vision that was given to us before we incarnated as to some of the key things we're meant to accomplish in our future life. And that includes things, it's not everything, obviously, but it's things like, okay, the kind of family you're going to be born into. If you yourself are going to marry, are you going to have children? Because there's no such thing as a purely biological pregnancy. Because what is happening? A pregnancy is about another soul coming into the world. So by definition, the spirit is involved in the pregnancy. This is why sometimes if couples are trying to have a child and they're not successful, well, there may not be karmic for that to have that child, and it won't happen until somehow things are meant to be in that way. So as far as romance, the other thing is you have to kind of, I know in a way it sounds almost unromantic at first, but you got to kind of plan out what is it you really want from somebody else. I don't mean necessarily looks. What kind of a person do you want? What are you looking for in a relationship? And put aside what anybody else is saying. Put aside any of the norms out there. This is where the meditation helps. You go kind of into yourself and you kind of feel, what is it I'm really wanting? And again, is it simply companionship? Is it simply romance? Or is it deeper? Am I looking for a marriage partner? So the clearer you start to become with what's important for you, put aside the pressure, the social pressures around you, then you start to have this clearer picture, because if it's not clear in your mind, how is it going to be clear out there? It's got to be clear with yourself, right? So the nice things I think right now is the because we're kind of more aware of things, actually, I think there's more opportunity than ever to have deeper and richer personal relationships in a romantic and a marital state, because now the world is just grown up a little more, right? So it means you have more opportunity to put attention. There can be better management of the roles between each other and who's doing what. So I would see this as a time of more opportunity, but also being more careful. I look at my nieces now that are in their early 20s, and I have to say, my brother did a great job and his wife raising them up, and they're very clear in their mind the kind of person they want in their life. And they didn't fall for a lot of the teenage trappings and all that kind of stuff. So they didn't focus on the things that were so frivolous that could distract your attention. So they've got all this vitality now to put their attention to where it's important. When we're in our teenage years, we're really, okay, in the auric field, you reach full maturity at 16 years old. Put aside what the laws are saying, right? But karmically, you become fully responsible for your actions at 16 because you're fully empowered in your spiritual energies. Now, we think of what a lot of the 16-year-olds do today at 17 years old. Isn't always the most productive, thinking about their futures, a clear, sober mind. Those are the things you need, because that will set you in your course in your life. And if you had those things, if you had that good mindset, great. If not, you can always self-correct. But again, don't let yourself be the victim. And kind of like what we were saying about early in the talk here, when there's this peer pressure. Let's say I had my spiritual awakening. Well, don't let peer pressure control you, because if it does, you'll always be a victim.
So is that where free will and choices come into the picture?
Absolutely. And to marry somebody, let's say, well, that person's in your tapestry, but guess what? You're in their tapestry, right? So there's an expression of the universe is conspiring for your success. But let's say here's the person I'm meant to marry, but I'm completely enamored of this person over here. I'm getting a little distracted, right? Here's Mr. and Miss Right, but I'm looking over here. So again, this is why we got to bring the divine. Now, this is the other thing I would say here. It's not just about two people. It's about two people and the divine. God is part, especially in a marriage scenario. It doesn't have to be in a religious context, but God is in the midst of that marriage. And that's what you want to invite into your life, that there's this divine piece of the puzzle. And that's what brings everything into cooperation. I think the problem right now is, in today's society, one of them is, it's become too materialistic.
That's true.
It's too focused. In my generation, there was still, the religious foundations were still strong. And that gave you a certain sense of stability. When you take God out of the equation, a society is going to crumble.
Yeah, there are more agnostics and atheists these days.
That's, yeah, a lot of them are.
Western world especially.
Right. Now, in general, people still are spiritually minded in the world, but we have to bring the divine or God back into the equation. Now, I'm not saying go back to ancient customs, but I'm saying we have to kind of find God. Actually, one of the things we teach is finding God in the 21st century. We see the world as getting better, not worse, and heading to a more beautiful age, but the science has done a great disservice, the material science, to making people think we're just atoms bouncing around the universe. That's completely false. Our bodies are composed of atoms, but that is not who we are. You are not your body. You are inhabiting your body. There's an immortal soul in your body, an immortal soul in my body, and that's not even of this earth. We're here for a visit, right? The body's going to go back dust to dust eventually, but the soul is going to go on. So the important thing is to stay connected to the soul, which inherently is divine and inherently is part of something greater. And when you have that sense of greater, there's a natural sense of confidence that you're not just wandering like a tumbleweed through life.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, because my uncle gave me this book by Richard Dawkins, The God.
Oh God!
I don't know if you've heard about it. And he was
I know.
science. He was a surgeon, so he gave me that book, and I had no idea what it was about. I read it. I read the whole book, and I had a spiritual crisis. because it seemed so convincing what I read. But then, and I was struggling for months with my beliefs. I'm like, what do I believe? And I felt like I felt like I was a lost soul for a couple of months. And then somehow I found my way back to spirituality. And I just felt so much better once I was able to find my way back.
God bless you.
I can attest to that because it felt so empty. It felt like a huge vacuum that I couldn't fill with
He
anything.
has hurt a lot of people. He has hurt a lot. People have actually committed suicide. Just like you said, they took that despair to such a degree they literally ended
Yeah, I
their
felt so
life.
much melancholy, Dimitri. It was such
Yeah,
a strange feeling. So
yeah.
I'm so glad I
No,
stayed out of that and I was able to.
thank God. Have you read any of Stephen Mayer's works? Because there is a
No, I have
debate
not.
there. So I would read some of his Darwin's Doubt. So he kind of counteracts the Darwin argument, and most convincingly, most convincingly. So there is a strong debate the other way, and his ideas are on they're on the outs, right? It's not working. Like you said, exactly what you said. You go through that dark night of the soul, but thank God you came out the other side. And you know what?
Yeah.
It makes you such a stronger person. And if you're helping somebody that maybe is in that dark night moment, you can say, you know what? I've been there. I know what you're going through. But there is daylight. I know it sounds corny, but there is daylight. Yeah.
So I would like to know, as a teacher of metaphysics, what is your hope for humanity?
Oh, that it finds its way. I have a lot of hope for humanity. I again, the I listen. We do receive a lot of inspiration, but I firmly believe the world is getting better, not worse. And it's the fact of how we hold on to that better that things are going to happen. When we are pessimistic, we don't want to do things. What's the point? It paralyzes us to action. And again, all you have to do is look in history and see any of its true progress. It was through inspiration, it was through divine guidance. There were things that were going on that were helped to make this happen. We're also a little bit kind of getting too lost in technology right now. We're putting too much,
AI,
all that, like
all
it's
that.
it's
Yeah.
going to be conscious. AI is not alive. It never will be. It will never be conscious. It will never, all that is nonsense. But it's also hyperbole because there's so much money flowing into it right now, right?
Yeah.
So dollars that's going into AI. So there's also money. That is one of the big challenges in the world today is money, the misuse of it. And if we get this right, where we put where money is just simply to serve a higher purpose and not an end unto itself, then we're really going to be in that goal. We're going to start heading into that more golden age. There is more wealth in the world than ever before. Of course, it's unevenly distributed, but the point is the opportunity is there. So I have a lot of hope for the world, but also I have clear eyes that we may have some, dark nights before we get there. There may be some rough days ahead, some quaking. Barbara used to say, hold strong to the light. You may see some, well, she called it actually the tail end of the scorpion this time. So where's the venom in its tail? The very tip of it. And she described this time like, stuff that was kind of already there but hidden is now coming up so we can see it, and it kind of looks gross, but it has to come to light so it can be exhumed. It's a little bit like, let's say I had a really infected wound here and it was all pussy. I may have to actually lance the wound, let the pus come out, then dress the wound, and I'll be fine. So we're kind of in that pus releasing stage right now.
That's a
So
very
yeah, we see
powerful
some,
and graphic metaphor, but
yeah,
you make your point
but it's
beautifully.
temporary. Yeah, but it's temporary. It's temporary.
Yeah.
Don't lose hope. The most
Don't lose
important
hope.
thing is to have hope. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful note to end our conversation on, Dimitri. Thank you so much for making the time to be here, and I enjoyed learning and talking to you. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all the good work you're doing to get the words out.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I want to let our listeners know if you want to learn more about Dimitri and his books and his programs and his events, please visit spiritualarts.org. The link will be in the description.